Hi, I'm Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me as I show you how to create this fall mixed fringe bracelet. We're using both headpins as well as seed beads, thread, and needle to create this fun kind of cha-cha style fringe bracelet. I'm calling it a mixed fringe because we are using pliers and headpins as well as thread and needle. So gather up your supplies. If you are a subscription box subscriber, October box kit, guys, this one's in there for you to create. Gather up your supplies and let's get started. So the number one thing that we're going to do to get started is to do our head pins. So this fun little charm bracelet is going to be utilizing kind of a mixed media that we have some head pins along with seed beads and seed bead stitches that we're doing, kind of mixing them all together and making it nice and full here. The first thing we're going to want to do is create our head pins. So a little lesson in creating that coiled link. I have a pack of 50 head pins here that I'm going to use on the bracelet and kind of spread out. And I have about 6 different beads going that I will use for this. Some of them I'm not even going to worry about putting on head pins. That's just that oval bead. I'm going to wait till I go through and do stringing. I also have RounTrio beads that we'll be building the base on. But to begin with, let's do a little lesson in wire working. I have my groups of beads here. I'm going to use all 50 of my head pins. I'm going to add a bead onto the end of each one, making sure that my beads don't go over the head of the pin, which these beads are not big, so you're not going to really have to worry about that. Slide on one of my beads, whether or not it's square, rondelle, round, crystal, little tiny round, and then another one of my seed beads. I'm going to do this repetitively, generally, that I'm taking this and I'm putting all of these beads and doing 8 of these, and then I'm going to do 8 of these, and then maybe 8 of these and 10 of these. Put them all on my head pins first, and then once they're all on my head pins, then I start to do my coiled wire. So for the steps for this, I'm going to pull back just a tiny little bit so you can see a little bit more of my hand. You're going to want a round nose plier and a needle nose plier and eventually a wire cutter. To begin, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to turn all of our head pins, holding on to the bottom, leaving about 1/8 of an inch. We're going to turn our head pins 90 degrees to the side. So I'm going to pick that up, turn that to the side, pick that up, turn that to the side, and you're going to do that for all 50 head pins. Once you have, and just to show you kind of the size variation, let me do this guy here too. Figure you don't want to watch me bend and turn 50 head pins. But for size variation, same thing here, doesn't matter. Hold above, turn 90 degrees to the side with your pliers. Once you have those all done, they have a little space in there for your round nose pliers. Where you hold on your round nose pliers is going to determine the size of the loop. We're going to go into that 90-degree turn and we're going to put our round nose pliers. You want the long piece of wire coming out the back of the round nose pliers, so this is what you'll see from the top. And from your front view, you'll see the bead kind of parallel with your body, and that short piece of wire is coming straight out from the back. You almost won't even see it. You want to see one jaw on top of the other, and then you're going to bring that wire, and remember this is the bird's eye view, you're going to bring that wire over the top till it hits on the opposite side. Once it hits on that opposite side, you're going to rotating your hand and switching that jaw from being on the top to being on the bottom. Take that loop 90 degrees and put it down. Pick up your next one, go in, put your loop there, straight out the back, this coming down parallel with the body, over the top. So you get really good at this. Switch from the top jaw to the bottom jaw and take it back to 90 degrees. Again, keep going. You got 50 of these to do, or more if you want to get really creative. Go over the top, switch from top to bottom, and go to the back. So you can see how quick it gets in doing that. Once you have them all done, then you're going to hold with your needle nose or flat nose pliers here. And you want to hold, if you're looking at this, I like to call this my man. You want to hold above his head. So you're going to hold from the nose up, making sure that your plier is not going over where the wire crosses over itself. Hold from the nose up, let him lay down in bed, and take this scarf here, that long piece of wire, and wrap it around his neck. 1, 2, 3 times. Doesn't need to be perfect because by the time you get it onto your fringe bracelet here, you're not even going to see those loops really in all that definition. Pick up the next one, go in here. If you see that it's a little bit off to the side, you can usually just kind of bend the bead down, bend the wire out, and that situates it for you. Go in here again, 1, 2, 3, next one. Next one's here. 1, 2, 3. If you only have room for 2, not a big deal. After you have all 50 of those done, pick up your cutters. You're going to take the cutters the flat side versus the V side. Flat side goes as close as you can. I like to come in at an angle to get that nice close cut. Cut off all that extra wire for all of your different pieces of your head pins. You're going to get all these little dangles, 50 in total, with a combination of your round beads, your bicones, your rondelles, your larger rounds, and your squares. Like I said, I'm going to put in some ovals too, but I'm going to wait till I have my bead weaving technique that I'm doing as well. So go ahead and make lots of little charms to hang down, and then we'll get ready to start on our RounTrio base. Now that you have all of your coiled head pins done, again, about 50 of them, we're going to go in and do our bracelet base. I have on here 6 feet of thread with 2 size 11 needles. You can use size 6 or size 8 thread. My sample piece I did with blue thread. This one, because I'm using a gray base, I have white thread, so you can see those whitish beads a little bit more. To begin, I have 2 needles. So I have 1 needle on either side of the end of my 6 feet of my thread. And I put 3 11-0 seed beads onto the thread and put on a cup button. I put the cup button on so that it is facing down, coming out the back, and I'm going to let it drop down to the base of the project, making sure that I have the same amount of thread on both sides. From here, then, I'm going to do 1 and 2 of my 11-0s on both the left and the right needle. And then what I'm going to do is crisscross through one of my tiny little 3mm ancient gold beads. Crisscrossing means that I'm going to take 1 needle through from the right side to the left side and the other one from the left to the right. What this does is brings my thread and needle back into one spot, creating almost like a triangle behind my cup button, which will make it easier to put on and put off, as well as more securely stay closed with the loop around. From here, we are doing a very, very, very simple pattern. You're going to add 1 and 2 11-0 seed beads to each side of your needle, and then we're going to be on repeat. RounTrio goes on through that outer hole. RounTrios are going to be a 6mm bead with 3 holes going through it. You want to make sure that all the holes are viable so that they all can be used. 1 needle goes through the rightmost hole, 1 needle goes through the leftmost hole, and you're keeping the center open. After putting that on, 1, 2, and 3 seed beads go on. 1, 2, 3 seed beads go on. And then we're going in and we're putting on our next RounTrio beads. Hole number 1, hole number 3, letting that all fall down next to my clasp. You're just going to do this pattern the whole length of your bracelet as your base for your project. So go ahead in and you're probably going to get about 5, 10, 15, 16, 17 or 18 RounTrios onto the project. Again, 1, 2, 3 seed beads on the right, going through the next RounTrio. 1, 2, 3 seed beads on the left, going through the opposite side hole. Keeping open the middle because we're going to use that as our hole to connect to our head pins. So those nice coiled links will get added in the center of this little fringe charm bracelet. Once you have all of your RounTrios on, you're going to do 2 seed beads and then 1 of your 3mm beads, 2 seed beads on the opposite needle, and then once again, sew through that 3mm round with your 2 needles going the opposite direction. That closes off the bracelet base and mirrors the start of the bracelet as well. From here, we need to do a loop for our button to sit inside of. So this is a great time to just kind of clean up your mat for any stragglers that may have gone off to the side. You want to do about 26 beads, between 22 and 26 beads onto your thread and needle here. You can see I'm picking these all up with 1 needle. I don't even remember if it's the left or the right in my hand here. And I'm just getting enough to do my loop. Once I know I have enough seed beads on to create my loop to go around my cup button, I'm going to go back through that same 3mm bead in the opposite direction, reinforcing that loop. Now what I'm going to do is take the other strand here, kind of flipping it over the other way. I'm going to do the same thing, going through all the seed beads here, reinforcing this extra thread here. Once I do that, I'm going to make sure to pull my thread and needles through that 3mm bead, which that will get us set up and ready to go down the center. At this point here, you are done with your round trios, you're done with your button. We're just going to be using our seed beads and our little charms that we did, those coiled eye pins. Going back through here, this 3mm bead, going back through here and down through. Give a nice tight pull to make sure you don't see any extra thread and you get that nice tight look to it. The needle that's on the right is going to come down through the right hand seed beads. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sneak into the center hole of the round trio. So I'm going to go from the outside hole there to the inside. Same thing with this one on the left. And we're going to do this the same way on the opposite side too. Going into the two beads before, which would be on the leftmost hole, but we are going to sneak from the left side into that middle hole, bringing the thread towards the center. Now we get to have fun. As we're going the whole way down this center line here, we have 3 seed beads in place. Instead, what we're going to do to link that center hole, which sits slightly closer, is we're going to do 1 11-0 seed bead, going through both strands of thread, because these have a little bit more weight with the coiled eye pins. So both strands going through the 1 11-0 seed bead. Then you're going to pick up 2 to 3 of your little charms. I've done 2 on both ends and then 3 in the middle between each one of that. I'm taking both charms through both threads here. And then after you have the 2 charms, and then again, like I said, I switched to 3. After you have those on, group up your needles again. 1 and 2 needles going through that same 11-0 seed bead. And then you're going to ride that pattern the whole way down the center row of your bracelet. So on goes those charms. Take your needle and thread then through the next hole of the next round trio. Both needles always going in the same direction as you go through this center line. Generally speaking, it's going to get a little tight in there where the head of the needle is. So I tried to take both through, didn't want it. So I'm going to do one and then the other. And I like this technique because you are getting 2 strands of thread through that little charm section. Once you pull the thread then and pull both of those charms will sit right in the middle of the round trios, kind of hanging out and floating around on those beads. Again, 1 seed bead, then now I'm switching from 1 to 2 of those charms. So I do a seed bead, 1 and 2 charms, and then another seed bead. I'm going to let that float down off my needle, grab my next needle and thread, and repeat. So go through, you can see the seed beads might go through the loops. That's totally fine. Going through the loops, through the seed beads, pull. That gets that down close to the project. And then we take our needle and thread through our next round trio bead. Center hole, going on through. Center hole, going on through. Pull that nice and tight. And get rid of my twisted thread here. And then you're just going to follow that the whole length of the project. So right as you're doing it then, all of those charms are going to sit to the top of the bracelet. As those sit to the top of the bracelet, you can see how they're just kind of hanging out along the top, waiting for extra fringe to be added along the sides. Go ahead and continue down your bracelet the whole way, adding in those little charms. And then we're going to reinforce our button and then come down and add our fringe along the sides as well. Once you get to the base or the bottom of the piece here, what you're going to want to do is the same thing that we did previously. So you can see this one here, I've already taken over that way, finishing up the strand, finishing up my second one here. What I'm going to do is come out through that middle hole there of the RounTrio. I'm going to go over to the left. Last one I went towards the right. Remember when I said we sneak from the inner hole to the outer holes? We did the outer to the inner on the opposite side. We're going through that 3mm round bead in opposite directions. So right now we've completed that center row with one strand coming out from the right, one strand coming out from the left. I'm going to take the one on the right now and reinforce my button, going up through my seed beads, through my button, down through the opposite side. This gets a second strand of thread going through. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other thread. So I have a third strand going through, and it can get a little tight in there next to the 3mm bead. If you have trouble getting it through, don't do it the third time. 2 times is fine. All right, so now we have all this fringe basically and funness to the top of the bracelet. We need to decorate some of the sides. I'm going to be bringing in my brown ovals here. I'm using these on the sides, kind of every other, to bring in that nice mocha look to it, and also a fair amount of my 3s, and then just picking up whatever else you feel like you need more of. Of course, you can always use more crystals and some more of the rondelles in that nice red and orange tone as well. All right, so once you're here, we're going to go down the right side and the left side doing the exact same thing. The needle stays to the same side that you're working on now, so you don't need to think as much. I'm going into the right hand seed beads and going through those 2 seed beads. 1 and 2 11-ohs get added, followed by 1 bead, doesn't matter what size it is, followed by 1 more 11-oh seed bead. From here, I go back through whatever the bead is, pull nice and tight to get the thread and needle right next to those seed beads that you added. 2 more 11s go on, and I'm going into beads number 1 and 2 of my group of 3 original seed beads. And then I'm going to bring my needle and thread out. So going through beads 1 and 2, needle comes out, and we're doing the same thing. So let me gather up some of my seed beads here. And we are going to do, coming out here, middle bead, 1, 2 seed beads, followed by 1 bead, followed by 1 11-oh seed bead. Let that drop down next to the project. Go back through the bigger bead, not through the 11-oh, which works as a stop bead at the end. Add 1 and 2 more beads. You can see right there, mine went through the bead after. Ignore that. Then you're going to go back through beads number 2 and number 3. So you're basically kind of spinning around in a circle. We came out bead number 2 in that group of 3. We're going back into bead number 2 and then proceeding through bead number 3. And that's going to let that fringe hang there. Continuing on, 2 seed beads. This time I'll do one of my silvery or my small 3mm beads. Another bead on, back through the bead. So simple. 2 more seed beads go on, 1 and 2. After those 2 seed beads go on, I go into beads 1 and 2 of the row of 3 beads that sit on the right hand side of the RounTrio. Once I'm out there, I do 1 and 2 beads, then my other bead sitting there, then again come back through the opposite side of the 2. You're currently coming out the top, you're going to go into the bottom, into 2 and 3, and just continue that fringe the whole way on the right. And move your charms, do it on the left hand side too. Just to show as you're creating, if you do run out of thread, I'm coming out right at the same section here, and I'm just going to tie off my thread to the back. You're never going to see it. I'm just tying one strand to the other, and then I'm going to burn down my thread edges. When I start my new thread, I'm just going to take 1 needle through the left hole, 1 needle through the right hole, and continue on like I'm ready to go. The thing that I love about this style of fringe and working with the RounTrios is everything sits to the front. So this is going to sit really nice and comfortable on the wrist. And then when you flip it over, all that beautiful fringe is right to the front in those gorgeous fall tones. I still have a little bit to go here. Then we'll reinforce the clasp and we will glue, or we will burn down the edges. Once you're at the end here of this fall fringe bracelet, you are going to be coming out right here at the end. We're going to use this opportunity to reinforce the loop one more time. Once you go through that and have that loop reinforced one more time, which I've already done with the other cord, I'm going to bring my thread and needle out to the same side of the project. Because there's so much going on with the fringe, and your button will pretty much cover any of that. It's a lovely color combo. Looks a lot more yellowish on screen, but it is a beautiful pumpkin orange color. All right, we are going over to the side now, right to where they are. And just like I did when I added thread, I'm just going to take, not my thread through that last bead there, to go right through here, tie a knot, right over left, left over right, separate out the threads so you don't see the knot a lot, bringing them back towards the back of the project, and then burning down my thread ends right along the back. I'm actually just going to burn them down right back here. And the nice thing with this is, one, my thread burner is dying. I need a new battery in here. But the nice thing with this bracelet is it's really, really forgiving. You're going to use about 100 varying beads to 120 beads. You can do a mixture of all of them. Because of the way that it is, you'll have that nice setting along the back with the round trios, and this pops to the front of this beautiful fall mixed fringe bracelet. Thanks so much for joining me in the creation of this fall mixed fringe bracelet. You can really have fun with colors and patterns and designs, and this is just to springboard that imagination to mix the head pins along with the thread and needle for a different look. Remember, if you want to subscribe or need any materials, go ahead and look below the video in the description. We put links there so you can gather everything up and get back to our website. If you haven't yet, subscribe here to this YouTube channel so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. Thanks so much for joining, and stay tuned for more inspirational designs.